Hello and welcome to another episode of 1000 Actually Fun Books, where we are looking to find the best of fun, enjoyable, good books in every genre. And today we're going to review the book Arrows of the Queen by Mercedes Lackey. It is her first novel in a trilogy called The Heralds of Valdemar, and she's written many trilogies in that world. This one I think is the first one she ever wrote. The one I'm going to hold up says Queen's Own because this library book happens to have the first trilogy all together. You can see my bookmark. That's at the end of the first book. So I've only read the first book, and that's the one I'm reviewing, just Arrows of the Queen. Okay, so the plot. This revolves around a girl named, I think it's pronounced Talia. So Talia is a poor, abused child in kind of the outreaches of the kingdom, and she wants to escape her home, and like a fairy tale, her wish comes true. We'll call it a magical horse comes and rescues her and takes her away, and she doesn't know what's going on, and she ends up landing in a completely new environment for her, a city with nobility and kind people, and she goes to a school and learns to handle her new responsibilities and abilities. Those revolve around being part of basically like a police force, a magical police force of the kingdom that are supposed to be wholly good, and they have these companions, these white horses. You can kind of see in the picture. The white horses are what sets these people apart. The horses choose them. The horses are special in that they're, I think, twice as fast as a normal horse and highly intelligent, and maybe can have a telepathic connection with their companion, their rider. So they're special horses, and the people that they choose tend to be very good people and wholesome people, and people that they get a little bit of sort of magical talent of some variety, and then they become forces of good for the kingdom. Mostly the plot revolves around her discovering all of this and what all it means and all the nuances of that, and exercising some of her gifts in various ways, including helping the kingdom out and learning to trust people and that kind of thing. So some of the things I like about this book, I like the potential. So the setup, because this is the first of a trilogy and the first of a lot of trilogies, there's a lot of setup going along there, and I do like the world building that is coming along. You know, what kind of world she lives in is interesting. I like by the end of this book, you kind of can feel that there could be an expansive set of stories involving this character or the world, not necessarily this character. I liked the fact that it kind of feels a little bit like a fairy tale, kind of the beats of the story feel like a fairy tale with, the impoverished person that becomes, basically the rising star of the kingdom. I can't say that I liked much else about this book. I was actually pretty disappointed. So this is, I can say you could do a lot of comparison between this story and like Harry Potter, the first book, where they're both children, because the main character is taken out of her horrible situation at age 13, as opposed to Harry Potter at age 11. They're both thrust into a world they know nothing about at a young age and into a school setting. But just about everything that this book did, Harry Potter did better. So, what can I say? If you liked Harry Potter, or that kind of a setup where it's a magical world, you might like this, but you might be disappointed in it. Because it's kind of bland and boring. Like, in the Harry Potter, just to give this kind of interesting flavor, I guess, in Harry Potter, all the classes are interesting. All of his interactions with people are kind of interesting. They're different and exciting, and, has that magical touch. This one feels a lot more mundane. a lot more like a medieval world, and you see the minutia of some of the things, what she eats and how she bathes and taking care of her horse companion. And none of it is particularly special or exciting in these things. It's more just, a medieval world, I guess, with a couple of magical hints here and there. The magic is not very prevalent for most of the story. At the very end, there's a kind of explosion of magical information or usage or whatever, but for the most part, it's not there. Anyway, like I said, it's just it's okay. The things that I didn't like were kind of overwhelming, though, the things that I did like. So let's start with our main character, Talia. So she is not 100% perfect in that she is shy and self-effacing to a detrimental degree. She's been abused, and it shows in how she acts. The author did a good job, I thought, with that. But the author kind of, despite that, makes her perfect in all that she does. She succeeds in everything to an exponential degree, does it in a way that's better than everybody else all the time. And I'm going to give you one example of this that was kind of irritating to me as a mom. So the princess of this kingdom is 8, and she is a spoiled brat. Now, the author does do a good job of explaining why she ended up in this position, but apparently everybody is helpless to do anything. Her mom, the queen, is helpless to do everything. Nobody can do anything about the brat, even though she's well known as a brat. Nobody can do anything. And so our 13-year-old heroine gets a hold of her, and after 2 months, she has totally fixed the problem. She is super mom, super nanny, something. And everything she does is perfect and totally corrects, and this child becomes an angelic being after, we'll say at the outside 6 months, but it seems more like 2 or 3. And it's so unrealistic. I mean, how does this 13-year-old become supermom at her age with no prior experience or relationship, really? I mean, if the same set of circumstances had happened to a 65-year-old woman who had a dozen kids and a bunch of grandkids that she raised and knew how to handle kids, it would be a lot more believable. But as this is, you're just she knows how to do it all perfectly because of the author saying so. And I was just this is stupid. And, again, I'm kind of at this point, was Mercedes Lackey a mom ever? Or is she one of those single people that, looked at other people's kids and was if I had those kids, I would know what to do and could totally fix those brats over there if I had, the ability to give them a spanking. And that's kind of how it comes across, as somebody without a kid handling somebody else's kid and doing it perfectly because obviously they knew what they were doing and the mom didn't. And I found that irritating. It was an irritating aspect of the book because it's so unrealistic. Another aspect, again, she's got superpowers that are, everybody is always in awe. Wow, she can do this thing better than anybody in history, kind of thing that you're just everything that she does is like this. She picks up things better than average. She learns things better than average. She gives advice better than average. She has empathy better than average. After a while, you're just everything she does is better than average. Wow. And again, it just felt like a Mary Sue. It felt a little bit like a Mary Sue, where you got this perfect person without flaws and makes the world better just by existing and everything that she does. Again, with that idea of a Mary Sue. So the queen, who is an adult, who has an 8-year-old child, who's been queen for years. So our main character, Talia, is supposed to be her advisor. That is her special role. She is gifted by fate or whatever to be able to perfectly help the queen. So again, you have the queen, and she has some difficulty with some things. And our 13-year-old is able to come up and give her the perfect advice multiple times. And the queen is just like, wonderful, I'm so glad that you gave me that. And this feels like a juvenile book, that because the child who can totally best all the adults and everything, again, you're just like, roll your eyes, this is ridiculous. Even with the idea that they do give some reason why she can give good advice, but it just doesn't feel realistic enough to make it feel like, why would this adult woman totally be looking at this 13-year-old as, you have the perfect everything I need, to handle being a queen or a mom or anything else. So I didn't like that. It was irritating more than exciting. Let's see. I'm looking at my notes here. Other characters outside of our main character. They're kind of one-dimensional and flat in the sense that you have wholly 100% good characters and wholly 100% bad characters, and nobody has any kind of gray area at all. So all the heralds are, practically sparkling with goodness, in all that they do, all their motivations, everything. Nobody's being a selfish person, I guess. And then it seems like everybody outside of that circle that you know anything about is wholly bad. Everybody from, not exclusively everybody. Again, you either have wholly good or wholly bad. I don't know that there's really anybody that's in between, that has, gray in any way. Again, that kind of comes across a little bit flat, a little bit one-dimensional, to have all the characters that way. Oh, and then here's a big thing that I really, really didn't like. So the author made rules for her world. Totally fine, she can make whatever rules she wants. But then she broke her own rules. And I do not like that. I think that's bad writing, to break your own rules. So, as an example, and this was the big thing, they've basically made Talia as she is going to be the most trusted advisor to the queen. That is her role in light, that is appointed to her for all her life. She will be somebody that the queen can wholly expect to always give her what she needs as advice and always be trustworthy, unbribable, uncorruptible, kind of person. That is her destiny, and she's currently fulfilling it. And it also mentions several times, kind of, not that the heralds can't lie, but they're disinclined to lie, okay? That they're mostly trustworthy. Then there is one incident that happens in this book where the Talia and a friend want to get some paperwork that they're not supposed to have access to. So the friend goes to get it and is caught. And the queen is there in the room with the caught friend, and Talia comes in and lies to everybody to get her friend out of trouble. Okay, so what we have just established is that Talia should be completely, wholly trustworthy by the queen. And then we have that Talia can totally lie for selfish reasons to the queen. So, to me, this breaks the rules that the author had established. Either she is completely trustworthy, or she really isn't. And the words say she's completely trustworthy, but the actions say that she isn't. And I didn't like that for a writing thing. Either she is or she isn't. And if she isn't, there, out of the hundreds of years that companions have been around with heralds advising the queen, somebody should have been able to demonstrate before our main character that they're not actually perfectly trustworthy, that they can have motives of their own, that they can deceive, that they can, have their own agenda, because clearly they can. So I didn't like that. My final thing that I didn't like was basically anything to do with romance or tangentially related to that. Everything in the book. So again, our character is 13 years old, and she's surrounded by people that are older than her, typically speaking. So somebody close to her own age, we'll say a 14-year-old boy, they decide that they are going to couple, and it doesn't end up working out, okay? There's nothing graphic here at all. this is definitely not a romance book. There's no, elevation of sex above, rationality. But they try a couple of times. And again, okay, this happens with kids, but again, I'm a mom, and I do not think 13-year-olds getting together, I just find that more gross than anything else. That's not something I want to read about. The fact that the author was okay with this, and a lot of characters are okay with this, the boy was okay with this, all that kind of thing, just was kind of to me, yuck. There's a couple other things like that. The biggest one I've got to warn about is there is a flashback scene, non-graphic, but clearly a 10-year-old boy is assaulted by an adult man. And it's all implication, but you know exactly what was going on there. And again, yuck, who wants to read that? It was sudden, unexpected horror kind of thing that happened to somebody. And, do we need to add that to the story? I don't think it made it better. And then there's a couple of other things. There's some lesbian relationships that need to be, they're plot points. There's the fact that she can feel her horse in his coupling with mares. Just things like that. Everything to do with sex in this book. Nothing was graphic ever for anybody for any reason, but I didn't like any of it. There was nothing about it that I was just like, wow, that's, beautiful or whatever. It could have been left off and the book would have been better. So overall, I wanted to like this book a whole lot more than I actually did. I kind of was leaning towards giving it a thumbs up for about the first third, but was, kind of about it. And then we had the Mary Sue-ish qualities with the kid and the problem with her being perfect in all ways, and then the bad writing choice on the writer to undermine her own rules of her universe. And I'm just like, no, it's an okay book. If if you're excited about, horse riding and you want powerful horses, although they're really not all that exciting, they're not really in the book much. Maybe later they would be, but they're just horses that are, better than normal. So yeah, I just give it an okay. It was okay. It wasn't horrible. I did want to get to the very end, and I would be willing to read more by this author. I'd even be really willing to read more in this universe, just maybe go and find whatever is considered her best work in this universe and pick that instead of this one. So that's my end conclusion on that book. So part 2, what I'm going to read next, I'm going to try Joel Rosenberg's The Kremlin Conspiracy. So I think this book is political action, spies, that kind of genre. So I'm kind of looking forward to something that I haven't done something quite like that in a while. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this review, even if I didn't give it a big thumbs up, and that you would join me next time.